Right, that's about enough of that. We don't need to see me die into fireballs. Happy weekend, everybody. It's really dark in this room. Hey, Rage. Hey, Pseudo. Hey, Pookie. Hey, Lurkers.
Perhaps you should turn your lights on. You do have an excellent lighting setup.
Let there be light. Hey, my webcam seems delayed. Maybe?
Rip.
Well, things just seem to buffer on this new setup once in a while, and it's just like, hey, I'm going to display late now. Stop it.
Stop it.
All right. All right. We're doing Castlevania Symphony of the Night first. Even though we played it last, it goes first. It's freshest. It'll require the less remembering. Hey, board. Welcome. SotN. Who watched
Good
it?
game.
Who played it? Need to know. Who watched it? Who played it?
I haven't played the game in a very long time, but I did watch all but the very last stream.
Welcome. Welcome, Gentleman Dapper. You actually missed an exciting last stream.
Yeah, it was unfortunate timing. It was when I was having all those power issues, and I was just like, I don't want to deal with my computer anymore.
It happens. It happens. Let me just kill this thing and restart it. Yeah, it looks fine, and now I don't know why it's so delayed over there. Let me put these right beside each other. Whew.
Seems just to be a weird week for tech.
Yeah,
Things
I can
are
totally
being
see the
weird.
delay between the two windows. Capturing that window directly. So confused. Image setting, anti-flicker. Fine. If I prioritize frame rate? Nope. Nope. No. Yeah, it's just it's a rough time for tech. I don't know why. It is. Damn. Damn. Okay, well, I'm going to vanish. But we're going to keep talking about it. Who in chat played it? Welcome, Gentleman Dapper. You played SotN? Doesn't even have to be recently. Yeah, look at that. Delay's gone. Okay, I'll take it. Ain't going to fight you on it. I'm just going to make it work.
Sometimes you just got to turn it off and on again.
Yup. Yup. That's all I can say to that. Yup. I don't know why it keeps buffering when it does, but yup. All right. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The only Castlevania I've ever finished.
And if you had to pick one, it's a pretty good one.
Definitely one that deserves to be played. They were all like, you know, old good games. They were hard. They made people, you know, commit. Their control kind of sucked, and their level design or level layout wasn't super thrilling to me. It was fine for a platformer. I'm not knocking it. It just wasn't thrilling to me. Man.
And as we discuss very often, it is totally fine to not like a good game, and it is totally fine to like a bad game.
Yep. Okay. So world building, I guess. We dive right in. And I feel like it kind of just leans on everything Castlevania and adds nothing to the world.
There's some explaining that goes on through dialogue, but not a lot.
Like Alucard already existed before the game, right?
Yeah.
What about the rest? Like Richter was the character from the old games.
Yeah.
So
But I think Lady was not.
Maria was her name, I think?
Yeah.
Wow, I remember her name. That's amazing.
Well, how was it for you in the perspective of, you know, not knowing the previous games? Like how well did it kind of introduce everything and kind of build the world for you and show you what you're kind of playing through at all? Or did it expect you to have played the previous games.
Chat told me that Alucard is half vampire. That's what it took. It took chat telling me the history of the game. There was, yeah, I don't think it ever hinted at him being a Dhampir.
No, I don't think it did.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not much for world building in the game.
There kind of isn't any.
Yeah.
And in a game like this, granted, it is quite a few games into the series. I don't know. I would say it's probably an okay at best, but I don't think it's a bad. I don't think it hurts it to not have a ton of world building.
It would definitely make it better to have it, though. Even an okay amount. Just a little bit. It would have been better. I think it's a bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go that far to say it was bad. Because there's lots of games that kind of, require you to have played the games before. But, there's some that will just totally leverage off it and don't even bother to, have any sort of uniqueness or, even complement what was there before. They kind of just go off the rails completely. And then everyone's just kind of confused and lost. I think for the most part, you can kind of understand that you're, going through the castle and what your kind of goal is and what the castle actually is and what's kind of around you and what you're fighting and why you're kind of fighting it.
Yeah, for it to be a bad in my book, it would have to actively hurt the game. And it doesn't. Just kind of isn't there.
Okay, so we'd call it a bad if at some point in the game you really needed to know the lore and you didn't, basically.
Yeah. I think that would be the line for me.
Yeah, or it's just so inconsistent or all over the place that, it could show that even the devs had no idea what the world was, and they just, slapped a bunch of stuff together. And it was just, if it becomes jarring to the experience of, what the hell I'm in and what the hell is going on, then, that's kind of would pull me down to a bad.
That's fair. That's fair. I can give it an okay.
Not a high okay, though.
There really is not much for world building. If you do not know the Castlevania story at all, you will probably not understand most motivations. The game was still fun, though. Yeah, you're not playing this one for the story. This is not a story game. This is not a world building game. This is not why the game exists. It is not why you should ever play the game. And if that's what you're looking for, don't play this one.
This is not the game for you.
No. If you want a decent old Symphont. Nobody called me on that one. Nobody can see it. That's why. You can see this one, though. Nobody read it. There you go. Fixing that. There we go. Okay, yeah. If you just wanted a decent Metroidvania that you can run around and explore, good game. If you want a challenge, probably not.
I think your experience is somewhat colored by your fairly significant amount of time spent in other Metroidvanias. I found, well, granted, I played it when I was a young teen, but I found it fairly difficult mechanically, but you're able to overpower by grinding. But anyway, we'll get into that later.
Indeed.
Let's talk about characters.
Yeah. Although I would like to just quickly add that if I was recommending a Metroidvania for difficulty, it would not be this one.
No.
It would be Hollow Knight. Go play Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight real good.
Go play I Want to Be the Guy.
Not a Metroidvania.
You sure that's not a Metroidvania?
Not really, no.
Good. I don't want to have to play it.
The characters in the game, though, they did more with the characters than previous Castlevanias. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. It's hard to have a really informed view with how bad the localization is.
That's fair, but we can only rate it based on the version that we played, which is the NAPSX version.
Okay, at best.
At best, I agree with. The last half of what you said. I mean, I played through the whole game, and I don't really know anything about any of the characters at all. Why the guy was the end enemy, none of it makes any real sense. If you needed to rely on any knowledge of the characters to play the game, you would be lost. Everything I learned about the characters, chat told me.
Yeah, but is it bad, though? Does it actively hurt the game, Howling God? Like, the localization is clearly not good. But the characters themselves don't really take away from the game.
To be fair, what he's saying basically is there's no point in the game, Howling God, where your character does something and you go, why are you doing this? I would say so if you don't know what's going on. You don't really need to know what's going on in a game, though. Like Dark Souls. There's our Dark Souls reference. You have no idea what's going on through most of Dark Souls, but it's still a great experience.
And I would say not knowing what's going on is more of a storyline and world building problem than a character problem.
Yes, yes. Though your characters, you have no idea what the motivation or personality or anything behind your character is. And they never even tell you that you're half vampire. So it's definitely not good.
Yeah, decidedly not good. I would say like low okay, there are characters and they stay the same character in the video game.
Has characters that don't change. At least they don't randomly change. Question mark? There we go.
They are fairly consistent, you know, with theming and everything like that. Like you're not all of a sudden turning the corner and it's just like a completely different styled character.
Yeah,
completely talking with a different thing. It's at least the same like pool of characters, and it's like on theme. It's within the game. It just doesn't, you know, add or enhance the experience too much. It was like kind of what was needed for there to be there, but at least it doesn't, you know, make you go like, what the hell is going on? Why is this in here? You know, or have a character that's just so out there or just unbelievable or just, you know, it was like just okay.
And the side characters are very memorable.
I do have one word to say to that, though, Pseudo. Shaft.
Like I said, the characters are very memorable.
What the fuck was that character? You're gonna have to bump this to 160p trying to torrent. At least you get audio. Audio is really all you need anyway. This is an audio show. We only give you video so you can gaze upon the beauty that is us.
It's true. Now, storyline. This is where I would consider putting the bad.
Honestly, the storyline is probably the strongest part of it. Between world building characters and storyline. They got enough storyline across that I understood without really knowing anything about Castlevania. Okay, what I knew beforehand was that you try to kill Dracula and Richter is the main character. That was my understanding of the Castlevania series before I came into this. That's everything I knew about Castlevania. Okay, it's not a big data set here that I'm working with. And through the game, I understood that Richter was tricked by somebody else in order to play on his, basically, fears that they're going to become useless now that Dracula's gone and use him to Okay, you know what? Actually, I'm totally lost already as to what happened. The story was terrible.
Aren't there multiple endings to this story as well?
We saw them both.
Well, there's actually more,
Oh.
but it's just more dead ends.
Neat.
There's like a bunch of bad endings, and then there's go play the rest of the video game.
Don't go looking for the story. Even if you look for it, you won't understand it. Just enjoy the Metroidvania aspects. Yeah?
I think that's fair.
Okay. Disagreements in chat? Speak now or forever hold your peace. We've shat all over the SotN story.
Because it's pretty shit.
And nobody has anything to say. Okay, everyone agrees with us. Let's move on. I'm not even going to look at chat. Performance is good.
There are whole
Ran on a
wikis.
console. No real slowdown.
Whole
Loading
wikis
times
devoted to-
suck, but CD, what you gonna do?
I was just gonna say, like, we'll probably talk about this more in a different category, but the game over screen, the time from game over to get back in the game was a bit painful.
I agree. To which I say, just don't die.
Yeah.
Get good, yo.
Animation.
This, I would say, is probably also a good.
You think so? Based on our ratings of other games, I think it hits an okay at best.
Really?
There's minimal movement to a lot of the stuff. Most of it is just sprites floating around.
Right, but they're really nice sprites with a reasonable amount of keyframes.
Which gives it good style. Nice sprites isn't animation.
I quite liked the sprite sheets they were using.
Yeah, I loved the
the
style
effects
of
and
the
stuff
sprites.
that were going on. I mean, we also have to keep in mind that it is, 97. And there was, I know, quite a other still really well done sprite games at the time, but it did go pretty above with a lot of the animations. Some of them were, for me, when I was watching it, I was kind of like, okay, this is a bit much. Like a lot of the like text effects and stuff that kind of come in, and everything is like, everything just seemed to have some flash to it, which, I mean, isn't a bad thing. I wasn't ready for it at the start, and I was like, oh, okay, neat. But I quite enjoyed everything that was going on, like all the different enemies, and just like the movements and stuff like that. Like it felt a bit more modern than what it was when I looked at the style. Is definitely, dates it and ages it, but with everything kind of going on, I at least liked it. It's harder for me to really kind of give the full rating on it, just due to how long it has been for that, and kind of what to gauge it to, because it's hard to compare it with modern stuff, especially with the tech and all the strides we've come. But it's hard. I definitely wouldn't say it's bad. I do.
No, definitely not bad.
High okay.
Yeah.
High okay. I wouldn't be too adverse to saying it was good.
I'm at an okay because it's no blasphemous.
Yeah, you can't
it's
really
no
compare
Hollow
it,
Knight.
so.
If Blasphemous and Hollow Knight are the bar, everything else is okay.
Hollow Knight actually had
There
pretty
is
simple.
no other good.
Hollow Knight had pretty simple animations, really.
Right, but it had high volume keyframes because it was all rendered off of 3D models. Like
Yeah.
that. It's the problem we run into where we compare everything to Dark Souls, and it's just not Dark Souls. So I feel like I could
Chrono
be
Trigger
talked
has better
down.
animation.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
No.
It felt way smoother. Everything felt so blocky in this game. When I was playing it, everything was chunk. And it was fine. It played okay. Didn't super impress me on the animation front playing it.
No, I guess this is one that we're gonna disagree on to the end then.
We need examples. That's what we need. We need examples. Find
like,
stuff
not
to
only-
support your argument, and we'll figure it out from there.
Not only did they have like fairly dense sprite sheets where you're getting quite a bit of animation out of the sprite. But they were also doing a bunch of 3D stuff, and they made the 3D work really, really well with the sprites.
I was pretty surprised to see like the coffin animation,
the 3D spinning on the save.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's actually really cool. Same with like just the, I was going to call them the dice. I can't remember proper terminology, but the kind of 3D stuff they had. I mean, that was actually pretty cool to see.
And it blended well too, which is the surprising part. Like usually there's a very clear difference between what is being rendered in 3D and what is being rendered in 2D. But they did a great job of blending the two styles of animation.
Apparently I missed a super jump ability somewhere.
I don't know if you missed it or if you just didn't realize you had it.
That's, I guess, possible. It looks like he has a follower thingy with him that I definitely missed. But he's bomping the hell out of the...
Yeah, there's special dialogue for that, and I believe there's also special dialogue for if you fly up that hole as a bat.
Yeah, I think I've seen the fly up the hole as a bat. I guess there are definitely times where it shines as good, but then there's so many, like all the enemies just have the one hit animation no matter what, and a lot of other things that you've complained about other games in the past.
For the trash mobs, yeah, sure, but like the boss animations are great.
Which one in particular? What's your favorite boss animations?
I'm thinking of the tentacles on the big floating ball boss.
Oh, that meaty thing that I used the axes to kill. Yeah, I don't know what its name was. Meatball animations. There we go.
It's Legion?
It actually pulled up the right enemy, too. Yeah, Legion. I'm amazed that actually worked. Legit. I mean, I guess I'd be okay with the... There's some parts of it that really are good, but there's some parts of it that really are not.
I felt that overall it really quite added to the experience. It was like a big focus that I saw. One thing I kept noticing over and over again, I was like, oh, these animations are pretty cool, especially with some of the effects that you get to use. You're like
that's fair.
Around and flying around and stuff like that. I felt that that's really what kind of amplified it. Like if you were to remove a lot of the good ones, like I think this game would feel completely different. In not a great way. I think it was a really good enhancement to the game overall.
They have pretty good death animations on a lot of the sprites.
They even have blood shooting out of it. I can't remember what enemy it is, but there's some enemy like cut them open and you just start spewing blood everywhere.
Okay, fine. Fine. We'll give it a good. We'll give it a good.
Had to fight for that one.
Yep. Animations are not perfect. Some of them may not raise to this level, but as a whole, it improved the experience. Experience of the game. Okay, let me go ahead and get this share done, because I always forget to do that. Timer app. Hey, look, have some Have some Aloy.
A
Doesn't she look like a normal human being in that picture? That's right.
She sure does.
when's that game supposed to release again? I keep forgetting. I feel like every time
2021
I
is the release date right now. You can type exclamation release to get an update on it. I keep it updated in there
cool.
since it's been paid for.
I feel like every time I keep looking at these upcoming games, every time I check them, it just seems to be like pushed back another month, and I keep forgetting. I'm like, all right, when is this game actually going to come out? And then I search it again, and it's like, oh, I thought it was this day. I guess it's been delayed, and I'm not paying attention to the news.
Yep, pretty much.
A bunch of games I thought were coming out in August are now September, and I'm like, uh-oh. A 2-month delay is not a good sign.
Yeah, the sad thing is that a 2-month delay is almost never enough time to actually fix any of the problems.
No, not at all. And that's what we saw with Cyberpunk, especially when they did a month delay. Like, there's, if you're at that point, like, that's really not a good sign.
No, there's like small, slim chances that it could just be, hey, we need to finish this polish before we get it out, but probably not.
Now, even then, like, that kind of stuff still takes at least 3 to 6 months. Just with the amount of stuff that has to go into it, and just, especially in a project that size, the amount of people who are involved, to have that be organized and go smoothly. If it's like a small team of 2 people, then I could see a month being quite a bit of time. But for like a team of that size, you're spending a month just organizing and planning, let alone actually getting the work done and getting it in.
The odds are small, but not zero. Like I said, it's totally possible that they were right at the very end of one fix. Like, we just need a couple more days to fix this. We're almost done. Just give it to us. And they give it to them. The odds of that being the case are minuscule.
Very small.
Not saying that's likely, but that could happen. That's all I'm saying. All right, Style. Somebody else do the writing, because I need to take care of a little bit of something.
Writing, you say? Style. Okay, so what do we think about style, Pseudo?
I really like the style.
I really like it too, and I think that's going to give me a hard time being objective with it.
Yeah, there was a few things that, like I said, I was going to this fairly blind. I haven't really played many Castlevania games, so I was a bit like I wasn't expecting style-wise. With franchises like this, when you play game after game, you're kind of, there's certain expectations that get set. So I'm kind of jumping into a later one. Sometimes things that people who are established in the series may not be as egregious to can be kind of weird for people jumping in first time. And the thing I brought up before that was just kind of weird to me was like the text effects were just kind of very strange to me. I don't know if they were like bad or anything like that. It was just one of those things that every time I saw one, I just kind of clicked in my head. I'm like, oh, that was interesting. Like,
that was also sort of an experimental era for a lot of UX design, though. It's just, they did a lot of stupid shit because they didn't have like patterns to follow.
They also realized, hey, we can do this now. Let's do this. That's very that text effect is very PlayStation era text effect.
It's very much the we don't stop to think if we should. We just because we could. Which is fair. Like, it's cool stuff, and especially for the timing in the era, right? If it's something that was new and hasn't really been done before, it's going to add a lot to the experience. Because you're like, holy shit, this is, I've never really seen this before. Which is, that was my experience now, like almost 30 years later to the game. It's just, holy shit, I haven't seen that kind of before. Like, it was neat. Like, I don't think it was bad. Like, stylistically wise now, contrasting it to other games before, like, it's one of those things that's just a bit inconsistent since it is just so a bit out there. It's like I said, it's more of a flashy kind of animation. I don't even know what would kind of be more appropriate for it. Something that's not as kind of serious in tone and style as this game, because it seems kind of, at least how that text effects have evolved over the years to us now, they seem kind of silly. But overall, I don't think it really was like that big of a deal to it. Over like everything else that's with this style is very consistent. I really loved all the sprite animations, of the portraits of the characters, even just the UI stuff and the like for your health and all that stuff, and the abilities you can use. It all was within the same kind of pool of reference, and I thought it added a whole lot to the game.
Yeah, their style guide was basically late 90s gothic anime.
Yep. So the style, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, but it worked. Like they were pretty damn consistent with keeping to that style.
Yeah. Just as my own note from the beginning, I was actually thinking of good on this one.
Yeah, there's because I am a fan of the style that they used, I am reluctant to give it a good, but that's just because I'm trying to acknowledge my own personal bias. I think between the consistency, like there's some fuckery with the UI elements, but the consistency of the like enemy design, location design, not that there was a ton of location design.
The locations are still unique. They all look like the castle, but they all have their own unique aspects to them. Beyond just a unique soundtrack.
I found them to be like pretty polished too. Like there's good looking sprites and good looking, you know, like lo-fi, low fidelity kind of animations and stuff, and especially when you're working with just bits. But I found there was a lot of kind of effort putting into it, not just, you know, shading and coloring, but actual kind of like embellishes. And I posted a screenshot of one of the rooms I was thinking of before, and it just everywhere you look, there's just like detail, like lots of detail, and a lot of stuff that's kind of just done by hand, and that shows throughout, you know, a lot of the game too. There's kind of a lot going on everywhere you kind of look. It's a lot of texturing, and that texturing gets applied kind of in most of the rooms you're in.
Yeah. I'm actually quite a fan of the style, and yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say. More than just a fan, I mean, everything else has been said. Consistent, high quality. Individual areas are recognizable. Oh, it's already been filled out too. Okay. I should probably look at the screen.
Yeah, you told us to fill it out, so I filled it out.
Awesome. So, musical score. This one's bad, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, super terrible. Just the worst.
Does anybody in chat disagree? Bad score. Negative music. Move on.
It needed more Space Country.
I mean, it did give you Jazz Coliseum.
Jazz Coliseum's pretty sweet. The weird thing is, like, it totally doesn't suit the Coliseum, but I actually like really like that track.
Honestly, I found it kind of strange, and I noted it at the time, and that'd probably be one that I would actually change, because everything else is so like symphonic and meets this like grand epic setting, and then you get into the Coliseum and it's just smooth jazz. You're like,
and not even like that smooth of jazz, like
not that
somewhat smooth, but a little weird jazz.
Yeah, it was a little weird, but all jazz is a little weird if it's done right.
No disagreement there.
Yeah, music real good. It was the first thing I noticed in the game when I was watching. I was like, holy shit. I'm jamming. I'm bumping. I'm moving in my seat. Like, this stuff is catchy as hell. It's like it's part of that era where there's still a lot of melodic tracks to games. There wasn't always going for a whole lot of atmospheric.
Yeah.
But this game still kind of felt to do both. It was melodic, but it still had a lot of atmospheric to it, just due to its kind of like the symphony of it. And it still kind of suited the kind of setting of, you know, being in a castle and, you know, the gothic displays everywhere. You
can tell even by the name of the game that the musical score to the game was core to its development. Like, I noted that immediately as I was playing. Like, it's called Symphony of the Night, and everything I've heard is orchestral and symphonic. Like, this isn't by accident.
Except for some reason the Colosseum.
It's one thing I kind of actually miss in a lot of action games, is that blend of melodic and atmospheric music. Because a lot of the times now we kind of just get one or the other. And it's either just, you know, like background noise and atmospheric helps
Doom 2016
build everything going, and then there's, you know, just straight kind of melodic and action and catchy, but, you know, it doesn't really help what's going on. And like Doom's a good example of one that does both, but it's, you know, like Doom is just, Metal God Simulator, which is fantastic. But another one that kind of does it pretty well was Halo. Some of the Halo games, when you're kind of getting to like the end, a lot of their finales have, they'll play their theme, and their theme is a really good build-up. It's melodic as hell, but it's also super atmospheric to what's going on, and it's a sick feeling when you blend both of them together, because you get the world kind of background built for you from what's going on, but then also you're just pumped up and ready for some action.
Don't forget the Rock and Richter theme from the beginning of the game. Yeah.
Richter theme, real good.
Yeah. He called it out. I agreed. It deserves to be called out. So I had to read it. It does start very strong. And you know what? That's something important that a lot of games miss nowadays. Start strong.
Yeah. Give you a hook.
Yep. Yep. You start playing this game and you're like, oh, wow, this is great. And then they take it all away and you're like, oh, I want it to be great again.
Well, and then the voice acting starts and you're just like, wait, what?
So we have to give it a bad.
Oh yeah, the performances were terrible.
They're great, and I wouldn't want to change the voice acting in the game at all because it would change this classic game. But it was not good. It was great.
No.
But it was not good. The voice acting is not good. When you see a bad and just a flat out, the voice acting is not good in our reviews, there's something up there.
It is hilariously not good, but it is definitely not good.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely didn't make the game any better, and yet made it fantastic at the same time. It's such a product of its era.
Yeah, I'm really thinking if it would have just been better for them to just not have it. And I don't know how much it really detracted from it, but a lot of it kind of did break. Not to say this game is immersive in any sense, but it's one of those. It was part of the game that every time people would talk, I would immediately just start thinking about voice acting and what's kind of like it would draw. It would break that wall for me that like, oh yeah, this is a game. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a game. So I'm wondering if even just the wall of text with some effects or some other things would have been good, but I think we're also in an era where we had a CD with all this space, and now voice acting was something that's possible. So a lot of games in this era just gonna have that.
I mean,
it's like, oh.
when you heard these voices when this game came out, you were like, "Oh my God, voices!"
Didn't matter that they were terrible. They were there, and that was amazing.
Did you like that smooth jazz ending credits tune?
Made more sense than the Coliseum.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with the smooth jazz ending. That makes sense. It's all chilled out now. Everything's done. Dust is settling, right? Coliseum, it's like people are actively trying to kill each other in combat, just on the other side of this wall.
Jazz.
That's just such a strange decision when everything else was done so well. It's like the old Demon Souls. That's the level I put that area on. And like some people swear by it and love it, but you know what? It's strange. It's strange. It's not supposed to fit. Even if it fits, it's not supposed to fit. And it's gonna be off-putting to some people. Sound effects.
Okay.
That's kind of where I was at too. They were fine.
There also weren't a ton of them.
There weren't a ton, but they relayed state information well enough with it. You could tell when you got hit. You could tell when you hit something. You could tell when you did a spell and changed. And
it really reminded me of the arcade era.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of how pronounced a lot of the effects and states are and stuff like that. It's not really a bad thing, but it's also not necessarily really a good thing. It's just one thing I noticed is it was just, hey, this game kind of really reminds me of the style of audio you would get in an arcade when these things are, everything seemed a bit not exaggerated, but had a purpose to be loud because the machines wanted to draw attention to themselves as well.
Yeah, they want to draw attention to themselves, and they want you to be able to hear the state relay information over a loud arcade behind you.
Yeah.
It does make the game playable because all of your sounds are clear and distinct, and they relay the information. It's not amazing, but it's fine. It's playable.
Yeah, I think we're all sort of settling around the it's fine.
It relays information well and makes the game playable. Yeah. That's their audio is an interesting category there. Do you think the voice acting is maybe even worse because of the contrast to how good the music is? I mean, it's bad, but you hear this like amazing music and you're like right into everything, and then all of a sudden just the worst voice acting you've ever heard. I've heard worse. Two worlds.
Those are different things to me, like the music and then the voice acting I hear.
House of the Dead 2.
There's definitely a whole lot that is a lot worse than this. That era and modern era. There was still at least like some resemblance of performances and, you know, character that was supposed to be there. There's a lot of stuff that's still from that era and from nowadays that's just, you know, reading lines. Especially if you look at like CDI era and a lot of those games where it was like, I don't know how to describe some of them. It was just like FMV, but then they stopped doing FMV and started doing animated stuff, but was still voice acting, and they just hired people to read lines, and that's literally what they did, and it was bad. It's like, well, we need audio, right? Because they're people, and it's like, oh god, what is going on here?
Yes. The early days of voice acting were not good. Although there were some like okay hammy ones from the CD era with the FMV games.
Yeah, the ones that were like intentionally B movies. Yeah. Those ones were pretty solid.
I liked Command and Conquer stuff, as silly as it could be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Command and Conquer did it well.
Intentionally B movie. Intentionally.
Yeah. I actually really enjoyed a Sega CD game when I rented it. It was the Western setting where you're shooting aliens in an FMV game.
I mean, I'd probably play it.
I rented a Sega CD. I had to get some games with it. It's not like they had a lot to choose from. Hold on. You guys talk AI. I'm going to find out the name of this game.
Apparently, Space Adventure Cobra was actually decent on the Sega CD. AI.
I think it really kind of boils down to boss fights.
How would we describe Super Metroid's AI? Because that's basically what this was.
I don't know. Like for me, a lot of these games, like I said, it kind of just boils down to how the bosses are, because a lot of the kind of trash mobs, they just have like the behavior, like this is what they do most of the time, especially for platformers. If they're not moving from platform to platform, they kind of just stand and wait, and just kind of get hit. They'll try to do a swing, a very telegraphed swing, and then that's about it. But that's kind of what it is for the style of the game. I mean, they are supposed to just be fairly, you know, dumb enemies just waiting for you to kind of plow through them to make you feel strong. I don't know. AI, especially for this era, is a very hard one, because a lot of it isn't really going to be like the classification for like AI for games like this. It's when you do game design, you have a hazard, and a hazard is something that's going to cause an end state for the player, and an enemy or AI is a hazard that, you know, moves, and a hazard that moves with intention and purpose. And even some of these characters, even though they move, they don't really have intents and purposes. It's kind of like a spike platform that's moving back and forth. You know, you wouldn't really call that enemy or AI, because you would see it as an environment hazard. But if we put a different model over it, we would automatically almost assume that it's an AI, when it kind of still just has the same behavior as just a moving hazard that, you know, paces between a couple spots.
Yeah. And even then the boss fight AIs are not exactly complicated either. They have a couple of patterns that they'll loop through. And there's not a problem with that. That's fine. But it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, we weren't really at this state, especially with games. Like I said, like especially for like these eras, a lot of times, you know, AI was just not really so. It's like we're just kind of still in that moving hazard state, or you know, patterns. You'd set a pattern, the thing would just do the thing through this pattern, and it's not really trying to defeat the enemy. You know, it's kind of just there, and things you just kind of attack it and kill it. It's yeah, there's still a lot of stuff that could be added to it. It's harder, I guess, for these style of games. But I wouldn't necessarily say it was bad. It still felt like, you know, these were enemies that were trying to kill you and go for you. They just, you know, weren't really going to give you a real challenge.
Yeah, I would say it's fine. It's the AI overall is fitting for the game and the game style, and it's acceptable.
It's exactly what you're going to expect as you're approaching it. Makes the game completely playable. It's not going to blow you away.
Accessibility.
There are certainly ways you could go out and try to spice it up, but it doesn't need it. Yeah, I don't think it's getting a great rating there. Like if you
it did have button settings. You could change buttons
on a PSX game,
apparently,
or on the PSP version.
For Castlevania Symphony of the Night on PlayStation.
Wow.
According to GameFAQs, it had button settings. I don't know if it was just like changed between a couple of profiles.
It was probably a couple profiles. They didn't do individual key rebindings yet at that point. See, I never leveled up really in the game. Like, I never tried to level. It was just straight exploration, and so I had to try on some bosses, but for the most part, I just took my dagger and found a spot where they couldn't hit me and went until they died. It was quite quick. Apart from some button mapping, you got what you got, and if you didn't like it, tough. Yeah. What? You can't play the game the way we made it? Guess you can't play it. That's kind of the way it is. It's it's not good.
Yeah, we can't excuse era for it too, because if someone looks at it and wants to play it in a modern sense, there isn't going to be accessibility for them.
Unfortunately, due to era, if you cannot play it the way it is, too bad. Luckily, there are many third-party apps that can help today with rebinding.
There's also the fact that you have built-in subtitles, which is nice. Like everybody gets text boxes. And also, I will say that the even the little bit of button mapping that is there is more than I would expect.
More than I would expect, I agree. But it's still not enough.
No, not enough to make it acceptable, but it is more than I would have expected from a game of this era.
Yeah, they definitely put in some care and effort, and they tried harder than most, but people just weren't thinking about accessibility in those days. It wasn't really a thing.
Unfortunately, still to this day, looking at you, RE8.
Yep, I would love to play that video game, but I'm not giving them my money until they put an FOV slider in it.
Even it still blows my mind. A slight tangent, but it was in the previous game. Like,
as somebody who needs double inversion to play with a controller, I totally understand where you're coming from. Yeah, the amount of games I just can't play because I go to play them and my mind goes, ah! It's just like, it's depressing. I wanted to play Alpha Protocol on stream. It was requested. I went out and bought the game and everything and like got it all set up. You have the console. It's all right there. And then I went to play it and it only inverts one axis and I tried to play it. And after the first 2 rooms, I had a headache from having to think every time I looked. I couldn't do it.
Even in the modern areas, it's still on that tangent, but like we're at the point now where hardware, where we like some things, like I'm gonna keep preaching this until hopefully eventually it happens. It's just like there needs to be standardizations of things, like what things happen on the machine that's playing and what things happen in the game, because right now it's just there's no standards, no enforcement, there's no standard, and things like controller inversion. I feel like that should be a setting that can be put into the consoles. Like they should be able to take that input and just flip it on a hardware level or on their operating system level, and not have to leave it up to individual game developers to implement it. That could be implemented across the board. The problem has been kind of solved. Just I want my up to be the up, like to go down instead. And it's like, okay, well, for a game developer to do that, it's a lot of man hours for every single game. But for the console to have that built in, that'd be kind of nice to have. And like I think Valve's been working some of that kind of stuff where they'll have configurations and it shows up as another emulated gamepad that you can make those changes to, and then it goes into the game for games that don't have that, which is a nice approach. But I feel like we're getting to the point now where that should have been a thing so long ago.
Yeah, the fact that that isn't available on modern consoles as a standard is ridiculous.
Yeah, I would like to be able to play more games. It ended up not being an issue, luckily, with RE4. So if you are one of my peoples that needs double inversion and you want to play RE4, don't let it push you off of it. RE4's control style is very different than other games because of the tank control base, and it just what I recommend is swap your aiming to your left thumb. Makes sense. That worked.
But back on topic,
yeah.
Mechanics for Symphony of the Night.
Solidly
there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
They're like a surprisingly large amount, and it's not necessarily a good thing.
No, they weren't really needed. A lot of them weren't used necessarily, but it was fine.
It was definitely one of those kind of product of its era stuff. Like it's not necessarily great, nothing's being bad. It was just kind of the look at all the things we can do. Especially when you're competing back in those days. It wasn't so much like it was harder for people to judge whether or not the game was good because there was just a lot of stuff at that time, and at this point it was a lot of selling points of like, look at all this cool stuff you can do. And it's neat at first because a lot of stuff isn't, it's fairly new, but then when that hype kind of dies down a bit, you're like, was it really that fun? Like, were these mechanics really needed and cool, or were they kind of just like flashy filler for the bit to kind of have something fresh?
I did like the inclusion
used.
Yeah, I did like the inclusion of the RPG style level and gear system, and I did like the inclusion of button inputs to do magic. The inputs weren't read particularly well, and I think it was because of frame drop problems, but I liked that it was there.
It was an interesting ad. It kind of was not really thought out well or balanced well, though, because if you accidentally find a spell early on, then you just win the game from then on.
I mean,
that's why it's an okay for me, not a good.
It's also just the case of like in a lot of Metroidvanias, and this is something you see in Dark Souls, there are ways to get very overpowered very quickly, and you can absolutely stumble into them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just why I'm at an okay with it. Like, what if they had taken that same thing and instead of just having them all available, but a hidden input that you have to figure out, it was a hidden secret in the world that you had to bust open and find. And then after you find it, you can figure out the input.
They did have the This would have been easy enough to implement, but they did have the scrolls available to show you the inputs for the different spells. But they could have locked being able to do the magic behind getting the scroll.
I think they should have.
I'm wondering if this is also part of, like, we see mechanics like this a lot in the kind of pre-internet era for a lot of games, back when game magazines and strategy books were actually making a lot of money. And I don't know if there was ever official partnerships and stuff like that, but it always seemed like sometimes developers would put in certain things that were just hidden that would make the game, you know, or like hidden powers and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden, you know, they launch day one with magazines, and it's kind of sus. Like, okay, well, you know, how did they know? And it's kind of incentive for developers to, you know, if they were getting. I don't have any official things on a tinfoil hat theory for a lot of this stuff, but there was a time where, like, there was a lot of money in that industry, and there was also a lot of game mechanics that you could only really find out from, you know, paying and buying magazines and buying the official strategy guide. And even Nintendo had a hotline set up where you could call, because, you know, games back then, it was a lot of trial and error. And I can't imagine getting to the point where a game where you're just so stuck that instead of just being like, screw this game, you're like, I'm going to pay, I can't remember how much it was, you know, per minute to call someone to tell me how to play this game.
Not gonna lie, I've called one once or twice.
It was there. Like, it was just, like, what are you gonna do? Just, like, the games were expensive back then too, right? Like, it was, you pay all this money and that's it. It's nowadays we just be like, no, give me my money back. What the hell is this shit? This is just making no sense. But yeah, it was back then, and then all of a sudden there's a bit of a market of making your game a bit, you know, hidden, a bit hard, and a bit, you know, not as clear. So there was a lot of weird game design at that time.
They could use a better balance.
I also really liked the movement mechanics in Symphony of the Night. Like the transformations, how they gated areas behind transformations. You didn't use some of the movement tech that you get access to, but like the super jump, the shine spark that you can get with the dog. Like there was a bunch of cool stuff in that game.
I don't think I ever got the super jump. Either that or it's a spell that I never found.
No, you just hold down, then hit up.
Okay. Did it?
As far as I know, anyway.
Did it say it in the instruction manual or something that I needed to read?
Jump.
Now, if I think
instruction manuals.
Things got tough when the video game mag industry started putting the mags on the rack into plastic bags like porn. No more quick perusal to see if it was worth it pre-purchase. Yes.
Upon finding the gravity boots or levitation boots in the Japanese version.
Didn't find them.
So there is a lot in the game. It is kind of neat that multiple people could have different experiences playing through it. It's not always necessarily a great thing, but it is kind of cool that, you know, this was also back in the day where most of your correspondence was either in the playground or, you know, people you knew in person that, you know, play a lot of games. You're like, oh, how is this? Oh, this is, you know, what I went through. Like, oh, did you find this? It's like, no, I didn't. That sounds really cool. And that was also kind of an era I miss nowadays where, you know, if you're not going on like a media blackout when a game releases, anything neat or cool is going to get spoiled for you within the first couple days, because there's just going to be endless YouTube videos of, look what I found in the game.
Yeah, yeah. That is still core to Metroidvania today, though. Everybody's blind playthrough will be a totally different experience in the game. Clock tower, center vertical path. Yeah, no, I did the clock tower center vertical path. That goes into, yeah, a la carte gear. Yeah. And also, I believe...
Alucard in the right-hand path?
Oh yeah, Alucard is right-hand. Central path, what I was thinking first was the selection of all the different use items. Is up there. There's just a bunch of different bells that you can smash, and then you can grab the stopwatch from there and come down and then take the right path. Oh, spoilers.
By the way.
We didn't give away anything important, don't worry. Bugs, I was thinking, I don't think I remember ever getting any crashes or soft locks or anything like that.
Some little, like, collision-y, clippy stuff, like any game. But
Yeah, I don't consider that a bug. That's just being a game.
good. Didn't hit anything that impacted a casual playthrough.
Most casual playthroughs should be totally unaffected. Got a hard lock on area transition on PS1 version. I did once as well, and for me it was a failure to read the ROM files, so you probably had a CD-ROM read error on area transition. We probably got the same thing. RNG was good.
Yep. Loot tables appropriate for the game.
Appropriate loot table drop variation. Otherwise, set item locations. Yeah, but loot table. Loot table is totally acceptable. That is the way to use your RNG. Don't just go anything can drop, but have nice curated loot tables so that the drops make sense. Yeah, I never found the Chrysogrim, but I've been told it's in the library. Something in there. Gotta kill. That's all I knew.
Yeah, there's a bunch. There's a bunch of video game there.
Yeah. Control was okay.
Yeah. It dropped a lot of control inputs, remembering back from when I was playing it. A lot of problems with frame drop in busy situations, especially when you're trying to cast a spell and then it misses your input and blah, blah, blah.
Emulator was probably better at keeping up. I didn't have a lot of frame drop issues. I didn't have a lot of lost input issues, so maybe almost better to play on emulator. There, I said it.
Turns out if you throw a lot of hardware at it, it runs better.
There you go. Fight me, OG hardware community. Emulator's better.
So writing was okay, video was good, audio was okay, and gameplay was okay to good?
Okay. Well, mechanics and control, I'm going to say, are probably the most important. And yeah, I mean, the music was fantastic, but all in all, the audio is fine. The music is all you'll notice, which is great. Yeah, I found Dark Metamorphosis. I didn't really use it, though. But I was told it can be broken. But we won't do the spoilers. Instead, what we're going to do is talk about SotN Sanctuary.
I like SotN Sanctuary.
Hey, the Ninja. Welcome. How's your day? Title backing. Title backing? Nope. Current subject. Just like that. Now we're doing SotN Sanctuary, and I need water.
So, let's talk a little bit about the world building in SotN Sanctuary.
Well, this has considerably more world to build than the previous game we talked about did, for sure.
And it also did considerably more world building.
It definitely didn't have anything to lean on. It made a very dark world.
It did. Very brutal.
Yeah, it's a fairly unique world, as I think about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to contrast it to some other stuff, but it stands out on its own.
The only other thing that you can really compare it to, in my mind, is one of the games that it took direct inspiration from, Dark Souls.
Yeah,
Like
it's trying to be Dark Souls.
it followed a lot of the same patterns and did it fairly well.
Its entire, you can tell the whole project's goal is 2D Dark Souls.
Oh yeah, the whole project was a love letter to Dark Souls. Like the devs have said as much.
Yeah. Let's try to do it in 2D. And do you think they crossed into the upper echelons in world building? Do you think they were really that good at it? Do you think they hit the mark that well?
It definitely gave me the same sense of wonder that Dark Souls did. And that is difficult to achieve.
For parts of it, I was curious. Definitely not all of it. There's definitely parts where I was just, I want to kill these things and get out of here.
Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, like the covenant system, the way that they set up the world itself, the little dribs and drabs of lore that you're getting off of items, it really did build into a very dark, very brutal world. And I think it was crafted well, and they left enough. And again, this is scoping that I'm going into here. They left enough to the player to figure out, where they clearly had it all planned out in the background, because otherwise it wouldn't be this coherent. But they didn't give you everything. They left enough for the players to have to go digging and figure out what's actually going on.
Yeah, do some self-discussion, have enough pieces to make sense. I haven't gone deep enough into the lore to be able to say how deep that world building really went to make sure the ends are connected, but it sounds like you have.
I did I would say a fair amount of digging into SotN Sanctuary.
And everything was coherent for you.
It made sense. There was a lot of you could tell that they were sticking to a theme or,
Yep.
an idea rather than necessarily filling in all of the details. But I think, especially considering that it's a two-man team, or a two-person team, I should say, that's fine. Like, there's not actually a problem.
Well, like you said, if it's all actually planned out, it's, even if the huge team, it's totally okay to take out pieces and leave them out to let the player try to figure them out. I do like it when they put enough that everybody can agree on one image, but that's difficult to do. Maybe if you don't quite get there, I think it's still a good, because you've created an area that's so intriguing that you've encouraged people to learn these difficult mechanics, with the reward being knowledge.
And I think if Dark Souls and the Souls series and Bloodborne is our benchmark for world building, then this is a solid 90 to 95%.
That's pretty damn good. Bloodborne's above Dark Souls on that front still, though.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would say another game that could be in that sort of benchmark echelon is not Banished. That's a town management game.
Not a lot of lore to that one. Blasphemous. That one seemed interesting. It did seem like it had places to go, and it definitely took the same sort of inspirations combat wise and everything. Yeah, is anybody in the chat familiar with SotN Sanctuary against us giving it a good for world building? It is pseudo against us giving it a good for world building.
No, I wouldn't. It's hard for me to argue with the Dark Souls comparison. I'm just thinking overall, just like what the world actually is, and a lot of it is kind of just like it's a different style, and a different style when trying to compare it to ones that are a bit more in your face with what the world is. It's just harder to really kind of, contrast the two, especially when it's, two different approaches to the player experience as well. One is more up to the player, and the other one is, you know, kind of just put to the player. And if a player doesn't pay attention to the world or explore the world and then says the world sucks, it's kind of like, well, yeah, you didn't, you know,
That's on you.
it's like the shooting. It's the shooting themselves in the foot kind of problem, right? And they may not know that they're supposed to do that, but that's kind of, you know, the point of it. You know, if they were explicitly told to explore the world and do things, then the charm of exploring the world and having that kind of organic feeling of discovery of what the world is then lost. So it's kind of what needs to happen.
Analogy works best here, right? Going through the game and totally ignoring the world is like going on vacation and hanging out all day at City Hall and then saying the city sucks.
Yeah, or like just staying at like the hotel or resort and being like, yeah, not actually getting the experience or not really paying attention to the surroundings at all. And yeah, it's kind of the same thing with these games. It's just like the mileage will then of course vary between players, and that's typically where we get these kind of huge contrasting opinions where people are like, well, I don't remember it at all. And it's like, well, what did you know, what were you doing? Like, were you paying attention at all? And it's like, well, no. And it's like, well, you're expecting the game to do that, and you know, world building isn't the game telling you what the world is. That's not just what world building is. Like, there's different ways to have world building in an interactive art medium than just having text and having dialogue explicitly tell you everything that's going on.
Yeah. If you're basing it on, like, if you're just watching it and not playing it, yeah. I was gonna say, I didn't dig into the world building that much. I was more about the combat and progression and finding bosses, and like I love lore, but I don't like digging into it in the middle of my action. I like to get my action out of the way and then dig into my lore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's why you don't see much there, but you watched someone else. Did they spend time reading items and digging into it? Because, like, you know, same as Bloodborne. If I do a Bloodborne playthrough and I don't read anything and we just watch some cutscenes and I tear through, it's interesting and it's intriguing, but there's not a lot of world building that goes on. You really have no idea. Other than the, hey, this place looks neat.
Boy, do they look neat in Bloodborne, though.
Yeah, like Bloodborne is something special. Like super, super, super special. It's a high bar. It is the high bar. It's like, you must set a new world record to make the team. Go. Yeah, but I agree it's not Bloodborne level. Absolutely. But still rises to good. Like our favorite wording. I don't attribute item flavor text to world building much. And that's where a lot of it is in this game, because that's where a lot of it was in Dark Souls.
Yeah, and they straight copied Dark Souls' world building.
Yeah, it is very much a Dark Souls game. But if somebody liked the Dark Souls world building style, then I would say yes, play this game. You're going to enjoy it. And that's why it becomes a good. Because we would recommend it just based on that area of it. If this is an area you like, then you should play this game.
And it's totally optional if you don't care.
And that's why the other goods are still going to be goods. Characters, however, I don't remember any of them.
In a game like Risk of Rain 2, where 99% of the world building is in item descriptions, it's fine. Well, I mean, it's the same as that.
Yeah. There's a lot of world building there. You expect more elsewhere. Well, I did get quite a bit from interactions with NPCs and whatnot, but again, like Dark Souls, if you miss the NPCs early on, then they're gone. You really have to like try and follow their trails and paths, and it encourages future playthroughs at that point, because you're trying to find all these events and quest lines and chains that you've missed because you didn't want to go back through these brutal, unforgiving areas. But they all add to it. Like, it's slightly below Dark Souls, I'd say. Where Dark Souls is below Bloodborne.
Yeah, like I said, I would call it, 90% of what Dark Souls is.
And they were able to achieve that with a small team because they were standing on the shoulders of giants and replicating instead of creating.
Yeah. It becomes a lot easier to do.
World building is a very similar style to Dark Souls. If you enjoyed the world building in Dark Souls, I would recommend this game. Yes. Characters were okay.
They were perfectly serviceable.
None of the characters will ruin the game, but you are not likely to remember them. Yeah. That's all I can really say about that. They're there. They have a purpose.
They exist.
They do a thing.
They have stories. You can go through quest lines with them.
So, I guess the storyline in a comparison to Dark Souls is an okay in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, the storyline is definitely lacking compared to the world building. There's much less involved with the player character and the arc that you're taking through the game. It's more obfuscated. There isn't as much of it. What's there is fine, and it keeps you moving forward.
It mostly keeps you moving forward. The path does the rest. Yeah. It's easier to keep the player moving forward in a 2D game than a 3D game, so they don't need to have as much story and explanation going on, because there's really only two ways you can go. And you came from one of them. Go explore. Performance is good, though.
Oh, yeah. Runs
on a potato.
Runs great.
It's a custom engine, too, which is kind of interesting.
Props on
was it custom?
Custom engine.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I remember reading on this. I think the dev released a whole book on it too, I think. Because it uses the XNA framework. But yeah, it's not using like Unity or anything like that. It was just made by them.
Neat.
Pretty good job. Animation's okay.
Yeah. Parries were super satisfying, though.
Animations are fine. They get the point across, but are nothing special. Parries were real satisfying. I don't know how I feel about the style.
I'm a bit torn into. For some reason, it really just reminds me of Flash games.
Yeah. But to take out the personal, it's unique. You look at a picture of it, you're like, that's SotN Sanctuary.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue for it is that the characters just feel so different from the environments. They feel like I don't know if they feel like they belonged in the setting that they were placed in. I'm not sure if that makes sense or not, but I don't know. It felt like that's what mostly made it feel like Flash to me, was just the character movements, the character styling. The backgrounds and everything like that feels like modern in other games, but for some reason the characters just really, I don't know, even the enemies, the character you control, the movements and stuff like that just didn't, it felt inconsistent to me from everything else that was going on.
I think the movement is the animation, which is why it's just okay. They kind of moved like marionettes, almost, at times.
Yeah, very, very reminiscent of old Flash animations and the tweening that goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
I was trying to figure out like, how much is style and how much like was intentional style and how much was just like maybe artistic limitations.
But like I said, you take a picture and you recognize that it's SotN Sanctuary, you recognize to a fairly good degree what area it is. They were all fairly unique. They had their own feel. There was some really, really distinct areas, like the ending area where everything's just glowing lights that you run on, stuff like that.
Yeah, the end area was very visually impactful. There are some issues with sameness within an area. I would say I found SotN Sanctuary much easier to get lost in than, say, a Souls game or even like Lords of the Fallen. Some of that is because it's 2D and there's only so much you can do in a 2D plane in order to make environments unique. But I think there are some issues with sameness and reuse of assets. That being said, personally, other than the criticism around the characters not quite lining up with the style of the background art, I do really like the style. Like, that's my personal take on it, is that I very much enjoyed the style. It reminds me of like a hand-drawn sort of comic booky feel. But objectively, there are some problems. I don't know, maybe we give it a high okay and call it controversial.
I'm okay with that.
I do like I really like the environment and like everything else. Even like the characters, I don't dislike them. It just stood out so much for me. Like, it just, for some reason, didn't feel like it really belonged. I didn't like, maybe it would be a bit different if there was like art or something in the background that had those same kind of characters on them, or something that kind of like brought the two together. But for some reason it just stood out to me, and I can't really put my finger on what it is. I'm not sure if it's just,
is it maybe the planing?
Because I'm trying to wondering if it's even just like the shading of the characters, and how they look. Like, I posted a screenshot in the chat. If you look at it, like, the way that the characters are colored and shaded is completely different from most other things, and that's not a bad thing, but it just, for some reason, sits out a lot for me. Like like black borders on them and everything like that. Like, I don't know. It's harder for me to say. It's likely was intentional over everything they're going for there as well, but it just really doesn't seem to have a lot of cohesion between the two. Like, it would have been nicer if some of the stuff in the background maybe had some things to kind of pull them together, but they feel like they were done and may have been done by, completely different means.
I feel
like it's also not nearly as jarring as it was in the still image, but as soon as it gets moving, that contrast becomes more jarring.
Yeah, and I think that has something to do with the planing. Like, there's a lot of enemies that have very similar colors to their backgrounds, and they intentionally planed and shaded them differently, I feel like, to make them stand out more.
It could also very well be just a love letter to Flash style games and Flash animations as well. It could have been, like I said, an intentional thing. It may just not fit overall, and for someone who maybe wasn't brought into that aspect, or it maybe wasn't made clear, and it could be it's their game. They can make it however they want, right? They don't have to make it for everyone to love it, especially if it's much of a personal project. So that's kind of my thing from it. It seems like a Flash thing, and it's not using Flash or anything. I'm assuming that's probably just intentional, and it's probably just something I liked, and was an approach that made it part of the experience that they were trying to maybe reminisce through, and pulling from their own experiences. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's bad in any means. It's just, that's what just prevents me personally from saying it's good. It's just it feels like that's a different source of inspiration, and if I was to try to break down the style, it's hard for me to put it all into one kind of style guide and then say, okay, well, characters need to not pay attention to anything else. We're going in a different direction for them.
Yeah. Like, there's a bunch of different justifications you could use for it. There's a bunch of different reasons that there could be for going that way. But the end result, I feel, is that the style ends up being very controversial. Some people love it. Some people hate it. There's very few people I've found that are like actually in the middle on it, and who are just like, yeah, it's fine.
I'm one of those people in the middle. it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't super turn me off of the game. The rest of the stuff is still interesting enough around it that I'm willing to pick it up and try it, but I definitely wouldn't pick it up and play it because of its style.
No. Yeah.
Musical score was okay. Really remember it.
I would say, well, I'm thinking back to your playthrough, and there were quite a few parts where we commented as you were playing on how much we liked the music that was going on in the background. I think it's just been a while since you played it.
And I also tend to not pay a ton of attention to music in games.
I did like the Nameless God theme. There was it. Some of the stuff did kind of have the blend I was just talking about before, where it is atmospheric, but still kind of has, you know, melodic tones and melodic, you know, has a proper melody in it as well, so it is a bit more memorable.
Fizzy guitar solos on top of an atmospheric track.
Yeah.
I don't know. People that actually played it or watched it, what do you think? Where was the music?
I wouldn't necessarily push it up to a good, but
okay, we can call out some of the tracks anyway. I'm fine with that.
Call out that there were points where we thoroughly enjoyed it.
To the level of a good, but there are points we thoroughly enjoyed. Yes, I'm good with this. There was no voice acting. Right.
Which I think was a great choice for this game.
Yeah, gets an okay. There is no voice acting. That was the right call for this style. It would be off-putting if you've got this flash game looking thing and then all of a sudden people are talking. And if you were going to do it, like we always say, you got to do it well. You have to do it well.
Yeah, there's no half-assing it with voice acting.
Sound effects. I didn't do any magic, so I don't know the magic, but otherwise the weapon sounds were fine, and the boss sounds were fine.
Yeah, not a ton of sound effects overall.
No.
A lot of the cast effects are, if not exactly the same, extremely similar sounding.
Good enough
but they
to get state information across.
Yeah, I was just going to say they do a good job of relaying state.
Yeah. You can tell when you block, you can tell when you parry, you can tell when you hit, you can tell when you miss. The basics are all there. It's fine. It's fine. The AI is like any other Metroidvania. It's okay.
Yep. Simple but effective. Bosses are not quite as complex as a Souls-style boss, but I would say they are generally, you know, maybe half a step to a step above what you would expect in an old-school Metroidvania, something like Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, it was definitely better than SotN for bosses. Definitely.
You could tell that they were reacting to what you were doing rather than just following a pattern. And the following a pattern is something we even saw in Hollow Knight, and that's a wonderful game.
Accessibility.
So I did pull this one up for accessibility. There are multiple languages available. There is full controller rebinding. You can change the gamepad icons, which is really nice. There are mouse and keyboard controls, so you could bind to whatever input device you wanted to, although it's not as good as supporting those in the game itself.
But they have the full controller rebinding, so they do support it in the game itself as well.
For X input compatible controllers, yes.
Fair enough.
But the audio is just sound effects and BGM selectors. But I mean, there's no voice acting, so we don't really need closed captions.
Mm-hmm.
What about audio cues? Do many enemies have audio cues for attacking that needed to be subtitled at all?
Everything is also visually telegraphed.
And like real telegraphed.
Well, some of them are very, very similar telegraphs at the beginning, but you can still tell they're doing something, just not what necessarily right away.
I would say acceptable. I have some concerns around the color palette used for color deficient or colorblind people.
Yeah.
But I would say that this is a very much acceptable level of accessibility.
So we're at an okay?
Yeah.
Not bad. Most people can.
It's a solid little game.
The mechanics.
Only thing I can think of that's awkward is ranged weapons.
The roll doesn't translate fantastically into 2D either.
I would say it's one of the better implementations of it, though.
Yeah, but it's still not great. Not great.
Honestly, I didn't have a ton of problems with it, but I played the game very differently than you did.
My biggest thing with taking like a Souls-like from 3D to 2D is in 3D space you have escape options. In 2D space you do not. So it becomes a lot more formulaic on the bosses. And it's just, I need to do exactly this to dodge this. In a lot of cases.
Yeah, I can see that. There is a fairly large degree of that in any Souls-like. And I mean, if you want to be super reductionist about it, it's circle around, hit him in the butt. But I think you're right. It is somewhat aggravated by the 2D plane constraint. But at the same time, I didn't find it offensive at all.
Yeah, it definitely bugged me at times when I was playing it. I noticed it. It stood out to me.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's call that out then. Combat mechanics. Ranged was not great. Melee weapons feel good. Spells are pretty satisfying. You get a lot of use out of items in the game, which is nice.
Yeah, range did suck. I remember that. I tried it. Well, I shot an arrow and I was like, nope. I think you saw me shoot one arrow the whole game. Roll does not translate great to 2D space, though it is one of the better implementations out there.
Boss fights are generally good. Again, being constrained to a 2D plane does hurt them a bit.
With the 2D issues in mind, liked the checkpoint system with consumable dolls.
Yeah, the statues are really neat.
Are they statues?
Yeah. Overall, I think I'm a good on mechanics.
I'm still at a okay. The combat is solidly okay. A lot of the other things are good, but the combat is solidly okay, and combat is like 90% of the game.
Oh, what about all the traversal mechanics, though?
Platforming in it was fine.
Get to walk on the ceiling.
That was a cool part, but then the jumping from platform to platform on the ceiling was fine.
What about the online stuff and multiplayer?
Yeah, I never touched it. I can't comment on that.
I don't know that there actually is any real multiplayer. As far as I know, it's just the messages that you can leave.
Okay, there's no summoning cross-world and stuff? No PvP?
I don't believe so. Oh, there is a 2-player co-op and versus.
Oh, yeah, there is co-op. I knew that. I knew this. Pookie and I were supposed to try it at one point. I have a good memory. Memory is my strength.
Now I want to try that.
Yeah, it could be fun. Game was fine. Yeah. No, I'm definitely at an okay. They were fine. Yeah.
I'm all right with an okay.
Okay.
I don't feel as strongly about this as, say, animations in Symphony of the Night.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I could understand enjoying. Like, I liked it enough to finish it. I definitely didn't like it enough to play it again. Definitely wasn't to that level. Bugs, I don't remember any that I hit.
There's like fun speedrunny bugs, but nothing that's like super game breaking other than occasionally falling out of the world.
We can forgive that because collision is hard, and you know, is it just like walking along and suddenly you're falling through the world, or is it like?
Nah, you get like smashed into a corner by an enemy while you're dodging and also jumping, and then you'd like clip out and fall through.
That's fine. that's just something that can happen in games. You have to cheat.
If it didn't happen to you and casually, then it's probably fine.
Good? Wait, we're at good then? I think we're at good then.
Yeah, I'd say so.
There are no major bugs that should be experienced in a casual playthrough. As always, fun speedrun stuff. Every game is broken to speedrun. Show me a speedrun where they haven't found things broken in a game.
I don't know if you ever actually tried it, but I remember telling you about this during your playthrough. There's a fun speedrunny bug where if you roll and jump on the same frame, it just fucking flings you across the map.
I don't think you told me about it until the end.
Yeah, that's
you didn't want to tell me about broken stuff while I was playing. RNG's good.
Yep, loot tables again.
RNG only applied to loot tables. Yay. Don't want a chance to hit when I hit. That was the worst idea ever done in a game. That was terrible. Swing my melee weapon, hit them, and then roll to find out if I actually hit them. Like, what? No.
You have to use the skill to actually hit them, but then figure out if you have the luck to actually hit them. Or if the, I don't know, that was always strange to me too. It's just, you need the skill to do it, and then on top of the skill, you need to make sure that for some reason, even though you hit them, now the character actually hit them. Like you punch something in the face and they react, and it's like, no, actually you didn't.
What are you, a blue player?
So as far as control goes, my memory of them is tight, fairly responsive, little bit of animation locking, but mostly on heavy weapons, and that's fine.
It's fine. You wanted a good for control then?
I don't have anything I would complain about with the controls.
I didn't have anything I would rant and rave about either, though.
It does exactly what you want it to, and it's transparent to the player. That's what you want out of controls.
I remember being pissed off at them once in a while, but that's okay.
I think that just happens with platformers in general, though.
Yeah, that's true. Didn't happen with Hollow Knight, really. But Hollow Knight's special. Hollow Knight can't be the bar for control.
Yeah, and you got a lot of movement abilities in that game as well, so it's...
That's true. That's true. There is a fairly distinct lack of movement abilities in the game. That's could be what I'm thinking. It is a much more Dark Souls approach, like we were saying. Slow paced. Yeah,
One could call it a slog, but it is an intentional slog.
I'm fine with that. Rolls are responsive with minimal blocking. I never felt that there was a moment where the controls killed me. I can definitely say that. I remember
rolls
bitching
that
about
you were
deaths.
expecting to go through the boss, maybe not so good, but
I don't blame the controls for that. It still rolled where I wanted it to roll. That's why the mechanics I pulled down to an okay, because that's bullshit. Just trap me in a corner and no way out. Fuck off. Yeah. Yeah. I'm fine with that. I can compromise there. It's still a pretty damn good review, even though it's okay almost all the way up.
it's a solid game.
Solidly okay for most of it, but solidly okay does mean that if you like that genre, you should absolutely play that game.
Okay does not mean boring.
No, means it's an okay game. Games are fun. Means it was fun. Nothing about it ruins it. Where are we at gameplay? Is that a good or an okay?
Well, we weight control and mechanics the highest in there, and it's good and okay. I would say bugs probably more important than AI.
Sure. I'm good with a good. I think it was good enough that we should probably have a good in the
I think
the
it's
finale.
a strong suit too of the game is its actual gameplay. I think it's
well,
the
the
main
mechanics
reason
are
for people to
okay.
Yeah, but I mean, like, people aren't playing the game for writing or
I
audio
see what you mean.
or
Yeah.
video. So
Yeah,
if
well-
there's a good in the game. It's the gameplay that made it enjoyable,
Yeah.
not the mechanics per se, but the overall gameplay experience.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. It was pretty good. The best 2D Souls-like I've ever played. And that's not actually that short of a list anymore.
No, the list has gotten considerably longer.
Well, we managed to not talk about Dark Souls as much during Salt and Sanctuary, but that meant we didn't talk about much during Salt and Sanctuary, and it went kind of fast.
I mean, that's good news for me. I'm starving. I want to go eat.
Yeah, I'm good with a slightly early one. We got the reviews done. We can play games maybe later.
Yeah.
If I'm back
And I
before
finished
you
up-
guys, I'll probably do up some Sekiro.
That's another excellent game.
I'm right at Great Shinobi.
That's a good fight.
Yeah, I'll go kick its ass. Last time I did it first try. So now that I said the last time I did it first try, I'm gonna die a whole lot this time.
You get to take the whole stream.
The universe needs to balance itself.
Yep, that's the way she goes. So, I'm glad there was some discussion and disagreement at steps, even from chat. That's wonderful. I'm glad you didn't fully agree with us, Ninja. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Truly.
By all means, share your opinions. If you have a differing opinion, especially so.
Yeah, that's the only way we get a better review, is if people share their opinions. We might agree with you, we might not, but at least we've been forced to think about another point before we make our decision. And we're not going to ignore it. We will think about it. You try. We notice. That's
You
how it
are
goes.
appreciated.
So, we're going to go eat food even a little bit earlier. Isn't that cool? But we will be back with more gamers. Come play some gamers. Come watch some gamers. Gamers are goods. I likes the gamers.
Big agree.
But until then, I'm Deus.
I'm Rage.
And I'm Pseudo.
And may all your shots be headshots.